Welcome everyone, join us today as we step into the extraordinary life of Harry Nilsson, a musician whose talent knew no bounds. From his humble beginnings to his rise to fame and the enduring legacy he left behind, this documentary delves deep into the captivating journey of a musical genius. So let's dive in. Harry Edward Nilsson, born June 15, 1941 in Brooklyn, New York City, United States of America. Nilsson's paternal great-grandfather was a Swedish immigrant who later became a U.S. citizen. He left a lasting legacy with his creation of an aerial ballet act. This unique contribution to entertainment history not only influenced the cultural landscape but also inspired Nilsson, as evidenced by his later album titled Aerial Ballet. His mother Elizabeth Nilsson, affectionately known as Bet, was born in New York to Charles and Florence Martin. In the bustling neighborhood of Brooklyn, their tiny railroad apartment on Jefferson Avenue was the backdrop to Nilsson's early years. Here, his maternal grandfather Charlie provided steadfast support while his grandmother shared her musical talents by playing the piano. Nilsson's father, Harry Edward Nilsson Jr., left the family when Harry was just 3 years old. His departure was largely attributed to Elizabeth's battles with alcoholism. Though he thought for many years his father was killed during World War II, a story his mother had told him, his father's absence had a lasting psychological impact on Nilsson. In 1952, Nilsson, along with his mother and half-sister, relocated to Southern California. There, he attended parochial schools and developed his musical skills, learning to play the guitar and piano. Despite settling in Los Angeles, their family life remained unsettled, with his brother Drake often moving between relatives in different locations before finally establishing a permanent residence in the city. Nilsson was intimately familiar with poverty from a young age, allegedly resorting to extreme measures like robbing a liquor store to help cover rent, and even ate dog food to survive. In Los Angeles, Nilsson decided to leave school and found employment at the Paramount Theater. Starting from the bottom, he eventually rose to the position of assistant manager. The Paramount was renowned for its live rock and roll shows and served as a significant influence on Nilsson's musical development. During his time there, he absorbed piano chords from the musicians who performed, honing his own skills on the instrument. Following the closure of the Paramount in 1960, Nilsson transitioned to working in a bank's computer department by falsely claiming to be a high school graduate. Excelling in his role, particularly in computer-related tasks, he managed to keep his job even after the truth came out. Working nights at the bank, Nilsson pursued his passion for songwriting and singing during the day, adopting the moniker Nilsson as his musical identity. Nilsson embraced the burgeoning music scene by 1958, particularly influenced by rhythm and blues legends like Ray Charles. He experimented with performing, forming a vocal duo with friend Jerry Smith and honing his harmonizing skills. Gifted a plastic ukulele, he delved into learning to play the instrument and eventually taught himself the guitar also. Nilsson's inability to remember lyrics led him to create his own songs, marking the start of his songwriting journey. In 1962, Harry Nilsson's uncle's singing lessons combined with his innate talent landed him a job singing demos for songwriter Scott Turner, earning $5 per track. By 1963, Nilsson found early success as a songwriter, collaborating with John Mariscalco on a song for Little Richard, who was impressed upon hearing his vocals. Mariscalco financed some of Nilsson's independent singles, including Bar Bar Black Sheep, released under the pseudonym Bo Peep. Another recording, Donna I Understand, led to a contract with Mercury Records, releasing Nilsson's music under the name Johnny Niles. By 1964, Nilsson collaborated with Phil Spector, co-writing 3 songs. He also formed a close bond with songwriter and publisher Perry Botkin Jr., who helped Nilsson find outlets for his music. Botkin even granted Nilsson after-hours access to his office for writing sessions. Through Botkin, Nilsson met musician and arranger George Tipton, who invested his savings to finance the recording of 4 Nilsson songs in 1964. Tipton arranged these tracks, which were sold to Tower Records and included on Nilsson's debut album. Their successful partnership continued after Nilsson signed with RCA Victor, with Tipton arranging most of Nilsson's RCA recordings until the early 1970s. However, their collaboration would later end mysteriously in the 1970s. The first singles were released in 1966, actually credited to him by name, as well as the debut album, Spotlight on Nilsson. None of Nilsson's Tower releases charted or gained much critical attention, although his songs were being recorded by Glenn Campbell, Fred Astaire, the Shangri-Las, the Yardbirds, and others. Despite his growing success, Nilsson still remained on the night shift at his bank job. During 1966, Nilsson signed with RCA Victor and released album, Pandemonium Shadow Show, the following year, garnering critical acclaim for his songwriting and pure-toned, multi-octave vocals. Beatles press officer Derek Taylor was among those impressed, buying an entire box of copies to share Nilsson's sound. With the success of this major label release and hits like Cuddly Toy, recorded by the Monkees, Nilsson left his job at the bank, maintaining a close friendship with Monkees member Mickey Dolenz until his death later in 1994. Some albums from Derek Taylor's box made their way to the Beatles themselves, turning them into immediate Nilsson fans. Nilsson's cover of John Lennon's You Can't Do That, and his incorporation of references to 17 other Beatles tunes in the mix, likely contributed to their admiration. In 1968, when John Lennon and Paul McCartney held a press conference to announce the formation of the Apple Corps, they were asked to name their favorite American artist and group respectively. They both answered, Nilsson. Nilsson's debut hit as a performer, You Can't Do That, reached number 122 on the US charts but achieved top 10 success in Canada. When RCA asked Nilsson if there was anything special he wanted as a signing premium, he requested his own office, accustomed to working out of one. After the Beatles' Apple press conference, Nilsson's office phone constantly rang with interview offers and performance inquiries. Surprising callers by answering himself, Nilsson candidly addressed questions about his schedule. Despite acquiring a manager and making TV guest appearances and stage performances in Europe arranged by RCA, he disliked these experiences and chose to focus on the recording studio, later regretting this decision. After listening to album Pandemonium Shadow Show in a 36-hour marathon, John Lennon called to praise Nilsson, followed by a call from Paul McCartney expressing his admiration. With Nilsson then receiving an invitation to London to meet the Beatles, observe their work, and potentially sign with Apple Corps. Nilsson's next album, Aerial Ballet, featuring Nilsson's rendition of Fred Neil's Everybody's Talkin'. Initially a minor hit in the US and a top 40 hit in Canada, the song gained greater popularity when it was featured in the film Midnight Cowboy a year later, earning Nilsson his first Grammy Award. Aerial Ballet marked another milestone in Nilsson's career, featuring his rendition of Song 1, a composition that would later soar to the top 5 of the US charts by Three Dog Night, also finding success in Australia through John Farnham's cover. Additionally, Nilsson was commissioned to write and perform the theme song for the ABC television series The Courtship of Eddie's Father, resulting in the popular track, Best Friend. Despite these achievements, some of Nilsson's earlier recordings, reissued by Tower Records in various formats, failed to make an impact on the charts. Among these was the 1969 single, Good Times, which found new life as a duet with Mickey Dolenz for the Monkees' 2016 album of the same name. Nilsson's 1969 album, Harry, marked a turning point in his career, as it became his first charting album and spawned the top 40 single, I Guess the Lord Must Be in New York City. The album showcased Nilsson's versatility as a songwriter, featuring covers of songs by then-emerging artist Randy Newman, including Simon Smith and the Amazing Dancing Bear. Impressed by Newman's talent, Nilsson dedicated his next album entirely to Newman's compositions. Nilsson Sings Newman, in 1970, while commercially disappointing, earned critical acclaim and bolstered Newman's career. However, it also signaled the end of Nilsson's collaboration with RCA staff producer Rick Jarrett, as Nilsson abruptly terminated their partnership via telegram, leaving Jarrett puzzled about the reasons behind the decision. Nilsson's creative endeavors continued with the animated film, The Point, in 1971, accompanied by a self-produced album of its songs, which included the hit single, Me and My Arrow. Later that year, he collaborated with producer Richard Perry in England to record Nilsson Schmilsson, his most successful album. This album produced 3 diverse hit singles, a soulful cover of Badfingers, Without You, which earned Nilsson his second Grammy Award, the novelty calypso track, Coconut, featuring Nilsson voicing multiple characters, and the raucous rock anthem, Jump Into the Fire, showcasing performances by notable musicians like Jim Gordon and Herbie Flowers. Following the success of Nilsson Schmilsson, which was still in the charts, Nilsson released album Son of Schmilsson in 1972, despite the challenge of competing with his own chart-topping album and ignoring Perry's production advice. This release saw Nilsson embracing a more provocative and irreverent style, alienating some of his earlier, more conservative fan base with explicit lyrics and bawdy humor. Nevertheless, the album reached number 12 on the Billboard 200 chart, with the single, Spaceman, becoming a top 40 hit. However, subsequent singles like Remember Christmas and Joy failed to achieve significant chart success. Despite his musical acclaim, Nilsson was known for his aversion to live performances, making rare television appearances and eschewing concert tours. His decision to appear on the BBC's In Concert series marked one of his few ventures into live televised performance, reflecting his unconventional approach to fame and public visibility. Nilsson's artistic integrity took center stage with his next released album, A Little Touch of Schmilsson in the Night, in 1973, a departure from his previous work. This album featured Nilsson interpreting pop standards, like Band Berlin, accompanied by an orchestra arranged by Gordon Jenkins. Despite the quality of the performances, the album failed to resonate commercially. The recording sessions were documented and broadcast as a television special by the BBC in the UK, showcasing Nilsson's unique approach to classic songs. Additionally, Nilsson appeared in a televised special directed by Stanley Dorfman, further highlighting his unconventional career trajectory and commitment to musical experimentation. Back in California in 1973, Nilsson reunited with John Lennon, who had relocated there during a break from Yoko Ono. Lennon expressed interest in producing Nilsson's next album, but their time together became more infamous for heavy drinking than for musical collaboration. With Nilsson's behavior taking a dark turn as he indulged in prolonged bouts of wild partying with celebrity friends, descending into alcoholism and drug abuse. This self-destructive behavior, stemming from deep-seated insecurity, tarnished his reputation, straining some of his personal and professional relationships. During a notorious incident at the Troubadour nightclub, Nilsson, Lennon, and Ringo Starr were ejected for drunken heckling. Nilsson's heavy smoking, drinking and intense vocal performances, particularly during the recording of the lackluster album, Pussycats, with John Lennon, led to vocal strain and damage. Reports from the session suggest that Nilsson's vocal cords were so strained that there was blood on the microphone by the end of the recording, but he kept it hidden, fearing Lennon would halt production. Despite personal and professional challenges, including RCA Records considering dropping him, Nilsson's friendship with Lennon and Starr led to RCA renewing his contract with added bonuses, ensuring his continued presence with the label. In 1973, Nilsson starred in the film, Son of Dracula, alongside Ringo Starr, featuring several of his songs including a new track titled, Daybreak. The soundtrack, produced by Richard Perry, was released the following year in 1974. Nilsson's voice recovered by his next album release, Twee on Monday, in 1975, but subsequent albums like Sandman and That's the Way It Is, in both 1976, didn't fare well on the charts. However, he considered album Nilsson in 1977 his favorite album, anticipating it as a comeback. Despite RCA's promise of a substantial marketing campaign, Elvis Presley's death diverted their attention, leading Nilsson to leave the label after they released a greatest hits collection without his input. Nilsson's London apartment, decorated by Ringo Starr's design company, was a hub for his musician friends. While away, he lent it out to various guests, including Cass Elliot. Tragically, both Elliot and Keith Moon died there in separate incidents. Distraught, Nilsson sold the property to Pete Townsend and returned to Los Angeles. After parting ways with RCA Victor, Nilsson's musical output became sporadic. He collaborated on the musical Zapata, but it never saw widespread production. He also composed the score for Robert Altman's Popeye, though it received mixed reviews. His final album, Flash Harry, was released in the UK but not in the US, with Nilsson gradually transitioning to referring to himself as a retired musician. Deeply impacted by the loss of John Lennon, Nilsson became active in the coalition to stop gun violence, advocating for gun control through public appearances and fundraising. He also made appearances at Beatlefest conventions, joining the house band, Liverpool, on stage to perform his own songs or Give Peace a Chance. Despite initial involvement in Graham Chapman's Yellowbeard movie, Nilsson's music was ultimately not used in the film due to production decisions. Returning to the studio in the mid to late 1980s, Nilsson recorded commissioned songs for various projects, including contributions to a Yoko Ono Lennon tribute album and a Disney tribute album. He donated his performance royalties from the latter to the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. In 1985, Nilsson founded the production company Hawkeye to manage various film, TV, and multimedia projects. Collaborating with satirist Terry Southern, they developed screenplays like Obbits and The Telephone, the latter intended for Robin Williams but ultimately starring Whoopi Goldberg and directed by Rip Torn. However, production was troubled, resulting in two competing versions of the film. Despite this setback, it found success as a theater piece in Germany. By 1990, Hawkeye faced financial troubles, exacerbated by Nilsson's financial advisor Cindy Sims, embezzling all his earnings, being only left with $300 and significant debt. Despite having to sell the family home, many individuals who had benefited from the singer's generosity were eager to reciprocate. Ringo Starr provided a $25,000 cash loan and purchased a new family home for Nilsson, which was paid back once his financial situation improved. Yoko Ono also sent a substantial check to offer assistance. In 1991, Nilsson contributed to the Disney album For Our Children and recorded songs for films like The Fisher King and Me, Myself and I in 1992. Nilsson's final concert appearance was on September 1, 1992, at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, where he joined Ringo Starr and his all-star band on stage to perform Without You with Todd Rundgren. Starr embraced Nilsson emotionally after the performance. His last album, tentatively titled Papa's Got a Brown New Robe and produced by Mark Hudson, was never released, but some demos from the album surfaced later on promotional CDs and online. Personally, Nilsson was married 3 times. He married Sandy McTaggart on October 24, 1964, and had no children, and divorced in 1967. He then married Diane Clatworthy on December 31, 1969, and they had 1 son before divorcing later in 1974. Nilsson's third marriage was to Una O'Keeffe, on August 12, 1976, whom he met in an ice cream parlor where she worked. Their connection was instant, with him stating she had the most beautiful eyes he'd ever seen. They remained happily married until his death on January 15, 1994, together having 6 children. Born with congenital heart problems, Nilsson also faced various health issues throughout his life, battling blood clots, diabetes, and clinical depression. After surviving a heart attack on February 14, 1993, he was determined to leave a musical legacy, urging his former label, RCA Records, to release a retrospective of his career and resumed recording for a final album. Sadly, on January 15, 1994, Nilsson passed away from heart failure at his home in Agoura Hills, California, at the age of 52. He was buried at Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village, California, and survived by wife Una, and children Zach, Bo, Ben, Annie, Olivia, Keith and Oscar. And there you have it. As we bid farewell to the life and legacy of Harry Nilsson, we reflect on the indelible mark he left on the world of music. His unforgettable songs, heartfelt lyrics, and fearless innovation continue to resonate with fans old and new, ensuring that his influence will endure for generations to come. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content just like this. Take care and bye for now.